G'day legends, welcome to a brand new video. This week we are going to go into unfamiliar territory, for me anyway. We're going to go way out west, about 15 hours drive inland to the South Australian Northern Territory border almost. We're still within Queensland, but it's a long freaking drive out there. And the reason we're going out there is because my son Billy is an avid reptile fan, and apparently it's great for reptiles out there. So last week he convinced me in a moment's notice that we should drive all that way out there. So a few days later I found myself chucking 2 swags into the back of the car. We packed enough food and water to last us for the week and grabbed a camera each, hit the road, and this is what we found. So in this video we'll just go through, a few of the photos, especially the reptile photos that Billy took. So Billy's new to photography, but he is getting really good really quickly because he's photographing his passion, and I think that's the key to improving with your photography. Try and focus on one of your other passions outside photography, and that strengthens your ability to get better. And that's what Billy's doing, and he's taking some cracking shots. So I just want to run through with him. He's going to step in soon, and he's just going to take us through a few of the shots and how he took them and what he did. There's also a couple of landscape photos in there that I took, so we'll briefly touch on them and my technique behind them. But let's get started with the video. We had a cracking week, and I can't wait to share these photos with you.
Oh, Billy, what's up?
Billy, I found him. Look at him,
G'day,
legend. That's my son Billy, and he knows all about reptiles, and he's starting to know all about photography. And what we're going to do is, like I said, we're just going to go through a few photos and show the footage of him taking the photos and what the reptiles are all about. So it's going to be a bit of education in photography, it's going to be a bit of education in reptiles, and you know, have a bit of a travel vibe thrown into it. That's what the video is all about. So let's get started. Okay, so one of the first critters that we came across was this. What is it, Billy?
Centralian bearded dragon. So this is one of the more common lizards you get out in the outback, Begona vidiceps, and also a very common pet in households all around the world.
Okay, so a lot of people might know the bearded dragon, but it was really cool to see it in the wild, and we were pretty excited. We got our first reptile, and he was on the road, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was on the road at first, and as you come up to these guys, they're quite a defensive animal, and so he was turning his body to the side, puffing out, trying to make himself look a bit bigger, opening his mouth, throwing out his beard, trying to warn off predators. So in the photo that you see here, he's doing exactly that. He's trying to warn me off and make himself look more menacing. So the bite isn't that bad. It still has some teeth on it, but all in all, it's pretty harmless.
Yeah, so we weren't going to get taken out by the beardy, so all's well so far. I'm not super au fait with the reptiles yet, but I'm getting there. Okay, so the very first shot that Billy took was with the 15-35, and it was set at the widest setting at 15mm, and the reason is to
capture the animal's environment, to show what kind of space that this animal is living in. So
yeah, I think that's important. So it's always good to mix up your focal length. So you'll see later in a later shot that Billy actually uses the zoom to zoom in and then gets even closer to the subject. But if you can get an establishing shot, which is a wide shot, well then it can tell the story, and then you can get your detail shots, and you can get your mid shots as well, which we'll show soon. So straight away, he didn't want to. He calmed the lizard down a little bit. It was used to us. It was still in that defensive posturing, which was cool for the photos because its mouth is open. But yeah, we were quite sure it wasn't going to run away. So now we'll look at the settings. So we were shooting this in manual mode. We just had a quick look at these settings. It was about 1/200th of a second. It was a quite a small aperture. I think it was f20, was it? F18 or f18. So that's a tiny aperture, and the reason why Billy likes to use a small aperture with reptiles is to get the entire reptile, if possible, in focus. Now, there's a few things that determine depth of field. distance to the subject. So if you are close to the subject, your depth of focus is going to drop off. So using a small aperture is going to help with, you know, having the face, the head in focus, and then having the body and the tail in focus at the same in the same shot. So that's why we're using a small aperture. I think the ISO for this one was up around 400. Now, that exposure is for the manual side of it. So that's exposing for the ambient light. So we're getting a nice dense, you can see the blue sky in the background is exposed well, and the foliage isn't overexposed or anything like that. Now, if we took this just as is, the lizard would be probably in pretty heavy shadow. But what we've done, as you can see in this video, we've brought in a light. So 2 flashlights go into this Magmod, I think it's called a Magmod or something like that, softbox. So it's just 2 of my Canon speed lights, and Billy on top of his camera, you can use a transmitter, but in this case we've just used another flash, and that flash is doing nothing. They're all set at manual. The flash on top is going off at the lowest power and just going, you know, upwards and not making any effect to the exposure. But the other 2 are turned up to, I think, around about 1/4 power, and I'm holding the softbox in as close as I can, because the closer the softbox is to the subject, the softer the light is. So that's the idea of that, and you'll see this set up a lot in the reptile photos that follow. So we'll move on to some of the other shots. Within that, he's obviously, Billy got a little bit of height there, looking down on the beardy. And then I am picking that this is my favourite shot of the series. What do you think, Billy?
Yeah, I agree. So this shot, what had happened is I'd moved him to the tree to get a sense of showing what this animal is capable of doing, in the sense that they're really good climbers. And so I wanted to get really close on this one, because I'm not trying to show heaps of environment. So I'm trying to show that these animals are arboreal, which means they can climb.
Yeah, that's perfect. There's so much detail. You can really see the colour in his eye, and his claws really stand out. You can see the skin, and you get a real idea of the texture. So really loving this, and the you know, the quality is just like epic. So not long after, we got a little bit further up the road and we found another lizard. This is Billy just saving it off the road. He'd already done a little phone story on it, and I got the gear out and captured this one of him in his element. It's a really cool shot of him admiring the lizard, and this is the whole reason we're out there, is for him to get exposure and learn lots about reptiles and have this experience. So we were stoked to get this little shot, but then Billy quickly wanted to get the camera himself and get some pictures. Now, before we go into the photography side of it, I'll just get Billy to give you a quick going over of what this lizard is.
So this is a shingleback lizard. It's got lots of names: bobtail skinks, stumpy tail skinks, all sorts of things. But at the end of the day, the Latin name is Taliqua rugosa. So these guys are found over a large portion of Australia, but they're not super common in Queensland. So I was really happy to see them. I've seen them in lots of other states, but never in Queensland.
Yeah, so that was a really cool find, and they do look a little bit different in Queensland. They're normally a bit grayer and darker, aren't they, down in southern states?
I noticed this one had a lot more yellow spots, as you can see in this picture.
Yeah, so he looks super cool, and once again he's in a defensive posture with his tongue wide out, and that looks really cool. Oh yeah, that's my favourite shot. Stunning shot. So the setup was pretty similar again. The aperture was small. Shutter speed was enough just to, so you won't get any camera movement. And the ISO was nice and low. I'm pretty sure it's even lower for this one. It was around 200. But the same technique, we're just using a softbox from the side. The idea of the softbox is it's a large area. The light is softer and less harsh shadows, and it just produces a nicer light. So while it's a bit cumbersome to carry around a big one like that when doing this sort of thing off the sides of roads, it pays off in the quality of the picture. So that's why we're using it. So I won't go too much about the way you can see in our video here that the way we're manoeuvring the softbox, and also Billy lying on the ground and getting nice and filthy, trying to get the shot. But yeah, how's that one with the tongue out? That's like an all-time shot. It's so good. Once again, quality's amazing. Okay, so as we move further down the track, the lizards got a little bit bigger. This time we bumped into a goanna, and yeah, he was like probably 4 times the size of the other 2 lizards, so it was really starting to get exciting. We just pulled off the road. Out rolls this fella, just tramps him through the bush. What is he, Billy?
So this is a Panoptes, so Rhanus panoptes, the yellow spotted monitor, and they look very similar to a lot of your other like sand goannas and stuff, but they do like water, and so that's why we found him near the creek. So this was the first one I'd ever found, so I was pretty excited about him.
Yeah, so that's the other thing. Going out all the way out west, we've spent a lot of our reptile looking days since Billy's been right into it, along the coast, or only 100 k's in from the coast. So as soon as we went a couple of hours inland, all of these species are brand new to him, so it was pretty exciting. So he's read about these, he's seen about the videos, and now he's got to experience one in real life, and that was super exciting for him. So with the Panoptes, it's a little bit bigger, and we didn't want to scare him off. We definitely wanted a shot, so we swapped up the wide angle. So the first 2 lizards we shot with a wide angle lens, and this time we went to the 100mm lens, and I think that was on the just the EOS R, so we were shooting the EOS R with the 100mm macro lens. So then you can keep a little bit more distance from him and not get in his face so much. Also get a different look. So you don't want to be shooting with your wide the whole trip. You want to mix up your focal length so you get different looks. And with this, what happens is that and straight away when you start shooting with a 100mm lens, you're going to get a drop off of depth of field. So the distracting background in this case, it still gives a sense of place and everything like that, but I think you're shooting at 5.6 here. So a wider open aperture, which will render the background a little bit more out of focus, but also using the longer lens also will throw that background out of focus a little bit more and put more emphasis on the animal. But once again, we had the softbox on this lighting it up so we could expose for the background so that wouldn't blow out, get too bright, and then fill in with the softbox. And this is super important with this one because he was in shade, so he would have definitely been really dark, but just that fill flash. Set in manual, we got actually that's another thing we did for this one. The first couple of shots we took were quite dark because we had it on, I think, quarter setting from the last couple of shoots, the last couple of lizards. And we found with this one, because we were a bit further back, not trying to scare the animal, that we had to pump up the flash. So the distance from the flash to the goanna in this case was a little bit more. So I think we went up to maybe a half power, or could have been even full power to get enough flash on him. So that was a little bit difference in this shot. I think Billy likes this one the best. He got his tongue out.
Got the tongue flicking out. And what I like about these shots is they're a bit more of an in situ shot. So while the other ones, you could see that the animal was getting interfered with. It had been like put in the situation off the road, obviously. Where this one, I hadn't touched the animal, which means that he's in a more calm, natural, just how you would see him in the bush. So that gives a different look as well. Which is also a very important thing to capture in wildlife photography.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure. You want to get them in the most natural environment. You don't want to stress them out too much either. I mean, and we're mindful of that. If we do photograph these animals, we just try and get it done as quickly as we can and move on and let them go. And mostly they're pretty cool with us. Okay, so we found a few more lizards along the way to Windorah. But we finally made it. We finally made it to our destination. I think it's 15 hours drive if you go by the speed limits, but I'm pretty sure we took about 25 hours because we were stopping all the time for these lizards and we were driving a lot slower so we could make sure we could see it. But 25 hours after we left the Sunshine Coast home, we got to Windorah just in time for the sunset, and just out 10 k's west of Windorah, there's some magic sand dunes, these red sand dunes, and we got there just in time for sunset on the first day, and I'll tell you what, it was cracking. Yeah, so when we got there, the sun was just hitting the top of the horizon. It looked beautiful. I thought, oh, look at that. Let's get the landscape gear out and have a crack. So this is when I took the camera off Billy and said, yeah, my turn now, fella. And while he was off over that way looking for a million lizards, I was getting my landscape on and thinking, yeah, we might get something here. It was clear the entire day, and it was predicted to be clear all week, but for some reason, just on dusk, all these clouds came over, and the potential was there for a really good sunset. And so just as the sun hit the horizon, I'm setting up with my 15mm. I think I was probably on 15 to 18mm for most of these shots that are going to follow. I was using a graduated filter. So the foreground of the sand dunes was much darker than the bright sky, like it normally is in a landscape. So that filter at the front is a graduated filter, which is dark at the top and just clear see-through at the bottom. So it balances the sky with the foreground. I'll be doing lots more tutorials in upcoming courses about how to use filters. So I won't go into it too deep here because it will get too long, but be known that that's how I'm getting the balance of exposure. I think I was using a small aperture, especially at this stage, because I was trying to maybe get a little bit of that sunburst on the horizon, and also wanted depth from those rippling foreground right through to the background. So as the sun set, I've got a few variations. Okay, yeah, so for this one, I've changed it up a little bit. I have gone for a super long exposure, and you can see that the clouds are smearing across the sky. They've got that movement compared to the last shot. So if we just go back to one of the previous shots, you can see the clouds are just as they normally are in a regular picture. The shutter speed was probably around ½ second or something like that. Slow, but not slow enough for the clouds to becoming moving. So I got it up to a rank, I think it was around maybe 2 minutes. It was at least over a minute. And you just get that different effect. So I was just trying that. And the way I did that was once again with a filter. So I dropped in a neutral density filter, 6-stop neutral density filter behind the graduated filter to get that effect. Once again, I won't go into the filters too much because that'll complicate things. And that's a whole another tutorial. But yeah, I sort of like this shot. I'm thinking, oh yeah, I've got something pretty decent here. And then the sun set and like went behind the horizon, didn't really do much for a while, and I took a few shots, and I haven't got it here to show you because they didn't even make the cut. But then about 10 minutes after the sun had disappeared behind the horizon, it got underneath these clouds and it started sending some colour skyward, and you know, look at that, it's like red dunes, red sky, and if it was a clear night, you just wouldn't have had that sunset. So I was super lucky to get, it was the only clouds we pretty much saw in Windorah the whole time, and they just came across for that hour and a half. So I was pretty stoked with that. So that's how I went about shooting the dunes. The next day, we'll stay in the dunes for a bit longer here. The next day we shot some of these dune photos in the middle of the day to get that contrast with the blue sky, and they're mostly wide angle shots. I really love the textures that you can get. This is in the evening, so you're getting those nice shadows that really show up the textures, and yeah, a couple of verticals there that show those contours and shadow areas and light areas. So yeah, it's pretty stoked with a couple of those shots. Definitely different to anything I've got in my portfolio, so I might end up putting a couple of them in my print shop for sure. Okay, so enough of the landscapes, let's get back to the reptiles, because this one's about reptile photography. Reptile photography is not something that I've really done before, but I'm sure we're going to get really good at it together because Billy loves them so much. And already I reckon he's getting some good shots. So we found a snake finally. Lots of lizards led up to this snake, but the first snake on the trip was this little fella that we found just out of Windorah. And take it away, Billy, what is it?
So this is a curl snake. It's one of the most common snakes in the outback. Suitor. basically a very short, grumpy, toxic snake. So this snake could put you in hospital.
Yeah, so the venom count was up. I was a bit nervous with him getting super close to it. He did shoot this one with a 100mm lens, and while the 100mm lens will afford him a little bit of distance compared to a wide angle lens, because it was so small, and Billy was on his tummy shooting this one with a macro lens, so he wasn't too far from it. When we first came across it, it did a few jumps at you, didn't it?
So they're a very acrobatic snake.
Yeah.
So they can jump quite a bit.
But once it settled down, he was pretty chill. So once again, 100mm lens. We had the flash. This was at night, so pure pitch black. Yeah, here's a couple of shots. So is this one of your favourites or what?
Yeah, that one's probably one of my favourites. It gets to show a little bit of this snake's defensive posturing. So you can see his belly there is looking very quite large, and he's flattening himself out, basically trying to make himself look a little bit bigger, and he's curling up to try and make it harder for an animal to grab him on a part that he can't defend.
No, interesting. Yeah, righto. I'll just go to a few others. You had to get really close in on him there because he's quite a small snake. So.
And another thing with the closeness of it is I couldn't get that large sense of environment with him, because where he was, it was basically just all these little rocks. There wasn't a lot out there. There was basically those rocks and prickle bushes. So I believe that getting this close kind of does show the environment, and also gets a really nice focus shot where you can see all of his scales and nice patterns.
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing about getting that sense of environment when it's pitch black is that the environment is only going to come up like a few meters at the most behind the reptile, the animal, because the flash isn't going to carry into the distance. So it was pitch black. So I think that's another reason why the 100mm worked on this occasion. Okay, this one's obviously not a reptile. He's a little marsupial, and what is he?
He's a Dunnart. So yeah, like Dad said, his little marsupial. He kind of looks like a rat, but yeah, he's native to Australia. And these guys are bounding all across the outback, so pretty cool critter.
Yeah, so he is a super cute little critter. Billy chose the 100mm for this because he's so small. He's a tiny little thing. Yeah, I don't think he would have appreciated a 15mm getting shoved in his face, because he'd actually have to be nearly touching him to get an impactful shot of him. But this one's cool. It shows that, once again, what Billy was talking about before, the environment, showing that the animal in his environment is all about the storytelling when you're taking photos. Okay, so one of the things we really wanted to do is find one of these lizards in the red soil. So there was a couple, like not everywhere was this red earth, this red sand. It was only in select places. There's a couple of sand dune locations along the road, but it was few and far between. But we hadn't found a reptile within the sand. And then Billy, we were walking across the dunes one evening, and he found this guy burrowing into a hole, and he pulled him out for a second, lifted him up and said, "Hey, look what I found." So I got a shot, and then I handed the camera over to Billy, and he got him onto the red dirt, and there he is. What is it, bearded dragon?
Yeah, another central bearded dragon. These guys were pretty common out there. So once again, he is showing, this one was a lot calmer, but he is showing still a little bit of defensive display. What he's also doing that you can't see in the pictures is he's kind of like lunging every now and then, which is also quite intimidating for a predator.
But yeah, it was cool. It was just good to get it, one of the reptiles in that, like that red earth. It's really cool, and he had all sand on his head, which just, I don't know, makes it a bit different from the regular shot. Maybe just put him under the tree and just pose for us like that.
Yes,
how good was that? It's so good. Okay, so out there, it's actually a floodplain. Hello, Banjo. There you go, big fella. So out there in Windorah, it's actually a floodplain because it's so flat. It is prone to flooding, and it was gathering a little bit of water because the week before it did have some some heavy rain. With water comes frogs, and we found some very interesting frogs that we haven't seen, that's for sure, out there. And Billy, we managed to photograph one variety, but there was many that we didn't. But yeah, have a go at this one.
This is a central spadefoot frog. Very interesting looking frog that I haven't encountered before. So very large bodied frog with a very small face, and they were just all over the Spinifex grassland. So these guys don't need as much water, and they're actually quite dry compared to a lot of other frogs. And so this one was with macro, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's 100 mil.
So this one was with the macro, and this was the second frog we found, and that was the first one. So this one's a bit bigger, got him next to this kind of succulent looking plant, and it just shows his big stature.
He's a buff, eh? Just a big buffer.
Absolute legend.
Looks like, look at his texture, it's much like the rocks out there and the ground out there. But yeah, there's heaps of frog life. There's one place that we put off the side of the road, and it was deafening with the amount of frogs. So that was cool to see. Probably something I didn't expect to see out there as much, but you know, once again, I haven't been out there, very inexperienced, but didn't expect to see many frogs. We saw plenty. Okay, so on the way home, we've left Windorah now, and we are trekking back across the desert. We got one more beauty on the way out, and yeah, this guy was quite a character.
Yeah, this one was exceptionally grumpy. But what I like about this one is it's a heaps lighter colour. And what I noticed with these guys is when they first start out, like when they first see me, they're a light colour, but when they start to feel more threatened, they go really dark. And I reckon they'd also use that for warming themselves up. So at the start of the day, they're trying to soak up the heat by looking darker. And then once they get really warm, they start reflecting that heat.
By going whiter, yeah. Yeah, but this is a cool shot because Billy, I think, took a few ground level shots, but then went up and got the beauty looking up, and you can see straight down his throat, and you can see the environment, the cracked earth and the sort of dirt and terrain that he lives in. So yeah, really digging this shot, and that was a good bonus to get out. Same sort of thing, had the flash in from the side, and using the flash can just like give the animal a little bit more pop and bring them out from the environment, and also you can expose to the environment and then fill in, like I said before. So flash is effective there, and it was our friend. He was cool. All right, so after we left this little beauty, we drove a bit further up the road, and we found what is probably the pinnacle of the trip for Billy. And what do we see lying across the road?
So it's a big mulga snake, or most commonly known as the king brown snake. So they're a very large snake with the largest venom yield of any snake in Australia, one of the. And yeah, just they've got a huge distribution, but I'd never come across one before, so it was awesome to finally see one.
It was laying out in the road in the full sun, and you know, I stopped about probably 20 minutes before it. Billy was out the car door before I even stopped, and he's running up to it to check it out. And I got to say, I was pretty nervous. You know, we were like 250 k's from the nearest town, and that town was just a petrol station, so no medical help there probably. So I was a little bit nervous with him. I thought, oh, he's not going to touch it, he's not going to touch it. And in fact, he had a few little goes at it.
Yeah.
And picked it up, and yeah, but we got a bit of GoPro video footage that you see rolling out here. But unfortunately, we didn't get a shot, we didn't get a still picture, so that is going to be in our sights for next time, to get a picture of the king brown, the mulga snake. What's the scientific?
Pseudechis australis.
Pseudechis australis.
Australis, yeah.
Getting the hang of it. But yeah, that was a pinnacle. We'd wrapped off the, you know, we finished off the trip in, you know, really good spirits. Seeing one of the snakes that Billy's been looking for a long time, and all of these species that we've seen are new. So, you know, just taking the punt and saying, yeah, why not drive 15 hours inland? Really came off. We had a great week, chilled out for the week, just up at dawn every day, and then herping into the night till around about 12 o'clock, getting 4 or 5 hours sleep in the swag, and then doing it all again the next day. So we got home, we were a little bit tired, but we had a great time, made the most of it. Got our cameras out, I learnt a fair bit about reptile photography because it's not something that I've jumped into, so hopefully together we can both improve on what we produce and yeah, help others to do the same. So thanks for tuning into this video. Stoked that Billy could come along for the ride and be a guest in my YouTube. And yeah, hopefully we'll do some more stuff on the reptile photography. If you've got any questions, comment below. Billy is starting to do my brand new course that's coming out very soon, or it could be out depending on when you watch this video, but it's basically a basics to pro technical side of photography that will get you very confident with your camera. So every time you pick up your camera, you know you'll be able to pull off the shot, and Billy's already learning lots, and as you can see, he's getting some pretty good photos. He's only a young teenager and he's nailing it. So no excuses, get out there, find what your passion is, and start taking photos of it. Till next time, see you later, legends.